My boss walked into a boardroom, shook hands with the client I spent 2 years building, and told them he was the one who made it all happen. And I wasn't even allowed in the room. My name is not important. What matters is that 3 years ago, I was a mid-level account manager at a regional consulting firm. Not flashy, not politically connected, but I was good. Really good. I knew how to find the clients no one else could crack, and I knew how to keep them. I had been chasing Meridian Group for 18 months. They were a private infrastructure company sitting on 9 figures of expansion capital, and every other account manager in the building had already tried and failed to get a meeting. I got one. Not because I schmoozed the right people at a golf outing, because I did the homework nobody else was willing to do. I spent weekends learning their industry, their pain points, their regulatory headaches. I drafted a proposal that addressed problems they didn't even know they had articulated yet. When their CFO finally took my call, she said, and I remember this exactly, "This is the first pitch I've read in 5 years that felt like someone actually listened." That call turned into a meeting. The meeting turned into a pilot contract. The pilot turned into a full engagement worth just over $10 million. It was the largest single account our office had ever landed. And every single step of it, every email, every site visit, every late Friday call was mine. Now let me tell you about my boss, the regional director. 12 years with the company, every year spent climbing on other people's shoulders. He dressed like power mattered more than work. Perfect suits, aggressive handshakes, a laugh that was always slightly too loud for the room. He had the social intelligence of a chess player and the ethics of someone who had never once been held accountable for anything. He was the kind of manager who never touched the work until it was successful, and then somehow always had his fingerprints on it first. I'd seen him do it before with smaller accounts. I told myself Meridian was different. I told myself a $10 million win was too visible, too documented, too mine for anyone to take. I was wrong. The first sign came 6 weeks after the contract was signed. He asked to be CC'd on all my Meridian communications. He framed it as executive oversight for a flagship account. I didn't love it, but I agreed. He was my boss. I assumed good faith. That was the door I held open for him. 2 weeks later, he scheduled a relationship-deepening call with Meridian's CFO without telling me. He used my email thread as context. He used my research as talking points. He introduced himself as the executive lead on the account. The CFO, who had only ever spoken to me, had no reason to question it. Why would she? He had access to everything I had written. This is the moment I need you to feel, not just understand, feel. He didn't stumble into this. He planned it. He waited until the relationship was warm, until the trust was built, until all the hard, ugly groundwork was done. And then he walked in through the front door I had spent 2 years building and locked me out of it. At the 40% mark of this story, here is what he actually did. And this is the part that still makes my hands shake when I talk about it. He went to HR and had me formally reassigned off the Meridian account. His stated reason, conflict of interpersonal dynamics affecting client confidence. He had manufactured a paper trail. 2 complaints, anonymous, both almost certainly fabricated, claiming I had been abrasive on client calls. Calls I had run professionally for 18 months. He had built his exit before I even knew there was a door. I was moved to a portfolio of dormant accounts, the ones nobody wanted, the ones that hadn't generated revenue in years. They kept my salary the same, so it wasn't a demotion on paper, but everyone in that building knew what had happened. The whispers started before I even made it back to my desk. And then, because it wasn't enough to take the account, he presented Meridian Group at the quarterly all-hands meeting as his own win. He stood at that podium with a slide that showed his name as account lead from day one. He used my proposal language verbatim. He got a standing ovation. I sat in the 3rd row and watched it happen. The fallout was not just professional. It was psychological. I went home that night and sat in my car in the parking garage for 40 minutes because I didn't know what I was going to say if my partner asked me how my day was. I had poured everything I had into that account, not for glory, but because I genuinely believed in the work, and someone had taken that and used it as a prop for their own career. Over the next 4 weeks, I watched him accelerate. He was now being considered for a VP promotion. Meridian was his proof of concept. Leadership loved the story. The story was mine. I started questioning everything. Was I being paranoid? Was I misremembering my own contribution? That's what prolonged injustice does. It makes you doubt the clearest facts of your own life. I almost quit. I had the resignation letter drafted. I had even started applying elsewhere, but something stopped me. Not pride, not revenge, not yet. It was a folder on my hard drive, because I keep everything. Every email, every draft, every version timestamp, every calendar invite, every call log. 2 years of documentation sitting quietly on a personal backup drive, perfectly intact. I am not a vindictive person, but I am a thorough one. And the moment I opened that folder and started reading my own email threads, the proposals, the meeting notes, the strategy documents, all with my name, all timestamped, all predating any involvement from him by more than a year, something shifted inside me. The anxiety became something colder, more focused. I did not go to HR. HR had already shown me whose side they were on. I did not go to my boss's boss. Not yet. First, I called the Meridian CFO directly. The woman who had said my proposal was the first one in 5 years that felt like someone actually listened. I called her on a Saturday morning, personally, and I asked her one question. Had she known, when she signed the contract, who had written the original proposal? There was a pause, and then she said, I assumed it was you. It read like you. That pause, that 3-second pause, was the turning point. Because she was not just surprised, she was irritated. She had built a professional trust with someone who had now been erased from her account without her knowledge or consent. That is not how major clients want to be managed. That is a relationship risk. I sent her the documentation, not as a complaint, as a professional record. My original proposal, the email chain showing the account's full history under my name, the timeline. I didn't ask her to do anything, I just made sure she had the truth. What she did with it was her business decision. What she did was forward it to our company's executive committee with a note attached. I never saw the note, but I was told later it included the phrase, we need to understand who we are actually working with. Meridian Group represented $10 million in current contract value and a projected $30 million in future expansion phases. The executive committee read that note the same morning. My boss was scheduled to present his VP case to the board. He walked into that board meeting not knowing a single thing had changed. He had his slides, he had his talking points, he had his Meridian story. What he did not have was the room he thought he was walking into. The VP presentation was suspended pending an internal review. By the end of that week, the fabricated HR complaints against me had been formally investigated and formally dismissed. By the end of the following week, he had been placed on administrative leave. I was reinstated as lead on the Meridian account. The CFO personally requested it. 3 months later, I was promoted to the role he had been auditioning for. I did not celebrate loudly. I did not make a speech. I went back to work, because that is who I was the whole time. The work was always the point. People who take credit for other people's work are not smarter than you. They are just betting you won't document everything. Document everything.